Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. And judging by all the downvotes on the last video, I guess nobody really liked that article about population not being the driver of climate change by Tim Garrett. I'm sorry, I actually didn't credit that when I was reading it. But it was obviously talking about civilization being a heat engine, et cetera, et cetera. That's Tim Garrett's thing. Thank you all for all your comments and the discussion. I hope that you realize I wasn't presenting that article, as something that I actually believe myself. I was just reading it. It was just another take on the sphere of climate change and all of the things that go into causing it. I, for one, don't actually agree with that article. I think it's a little bit ridiculous to not think. So if civilization is a heat engine and, if you have a larger population, then you have a larger civilization, then you have more heat. So if you have a less population, less civilization, less heat. That's my really, really simple equation, which I think a lot of people would probably agree with. Let's move on. So breaking news. There's a large heat wave already hitting the Midwest and the East Coast, but ramping up this weekend. This is from today. The hottest weather in years is stifling 2/3 of the United States, stretching from Texas and Oklahoma northeastward to Maine. The National Weather Service is using strong language to describe the hazards posed by this event. The Weather Service Forecast Office in Chicago, for example, is calling this one of the hotter and more humid air masses since 2012. By the time this event ends by Tuesday, 86% of the lower 48 states will have experienced high temperatures of at least 90 degrees, and close to 50% will have seen temperatures reach or exceed 95 degrees. On Friday morning, forecasters at the Weather Service Forecast Office in Philadelphia wrote that this heat wave would have prolonged, dangerous, and potentially deadly. Would be. Warning of a heat index as high as 115 degrees on Saturday, forecasters noted. Heat-related illnesses and death can occur in minutes on days such as these, wet bulb temperatures. On days such as these, in cases of overexertion or entrapments in hot vehicles. Because of this, extreme caution should be exercised over the weekend with regards to heat. And we're going to look at some of these temperatures. Youch. So this is apparent temperature, I guess, what it might feel like. So Washington, D.C., 105. Detroit, 112. Ooh. Des Moines, 108. Springfield, Missouri, 102. St. Louis, 105. Peoria, 108. Chicago, 108. Boston, 99. New York City, 107. Ooh. So if you've ever been on the East Coast when it's above 100 degrees and the humidity is quite high, it's just absolutely brutal. I think I was in Philadelphia a few years ago and it was 102 or something like that. And it was just... It was brain-meltingly hot. So that is really hot. To piggyback on that, flood lingers in central U.S. as heat wave threatens the East Coast. So this is cascading extreme climate events, fun with climate change. Slow-moving remnants of Barry delivered 16 inches of rain in southwestern Arkansas on Tuesday. It's from July 17th. Breaking the state's record for the most precipitation from a tropical system. What's left of Barry now is forecast to combine with a frontal system, producing more severe storms, rainfall, and potential flooding. Flash flood alerts were issued Wednesday, so this was a few days ago, Wednesday morning in 7 states from Minnesota to New Jersey. Some areas could see more than 4 inches. The frontal system and tropical moisture from Barry could also ignite multiple severe storms in the plains, the upper Midwest and Northeast later in the day. Damaging winds, large hail, and slight chance for tornadoes are the biggest threats. So, and then they cover the heat wave, heat, hot, hot, hot. It has been somewhat hot here in LA lately, although still continuing with a rather mild summer. So everybody in LA is like, "What climate change? Everything's fine." I don't see anything. Yeah, if you're not in it, maybe don't speak on it because other people are experiencing some very severe weather. So, okay, we're going to move to this article, which I find amusing and frightening and enlightening all at the same time. This is from Tuesday, July 16th, Julian Borger, Washington, or from The Guardian. House orders Pentagon to review if it exposed Americans to weaponized ticks. A New Jersey lawmaker suggests the government turned insects into bioweapons to spread disease and possibly release them. Yeah. Fun with military-industrial complex. Fun with covert operations. Fun, with intelligence agencies, rogue intelligence agencies. The U.S. House of Representatives has called for an investigation into whether the spread of Lyme disease had its roots in a Pentagon experiment in weaponizing ticks. The House approved an amendment proposed by a Republican congressman from New Jersey, Chris Smith, instructing the Defense Department's Inspector General to conduct a review. So let's ask the defense industry to investigate itself, just like asking police departments to investigate themselves. Tell us what you find, okay? Or asking the DNC to investigate themselves. Tell us what you find, okay? Let us know if you're guilty or not, okay? That would be great. The review, let me see. Whether the U.S. experimented with ticks and other insects regarding use as a biological weapon between the years of 1950 and 1975. The review would have to assess the scope of the experiment and whether any ticks or insects used in such experiment were released outside of any laboratory by accident or experiment design. The amendment was approved by a voice vote in the House and added to a defense spending bill, but the bill still has to be reconciled with the Senate version. Smith said the amendment was inspired by a number of books and articles suggesting that significant research had been done by U.S. government facilities, including Fort Detrick, Maryland, and Plum Island, New York, to turn ticks and other insects into bioweapons. A new book published in May by Stanford University science writer and former Lyme sufferer Chris Newby has raised questions about the origins of the disease, which affects 400,000 Americans each year. Bitten, The Secret History of Lyme Disease and Biological Weapons, cites the Swiss-born discoverer of the Lyme pathogen, Willy Bergsdorfer, as saying that the Lyme epidemic was a military experiment that had gone wrong. Bergdorfer, who died in 2014, worked as a bioweapons researcher for the U.S. military and said he was tasked with breeding fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, and other blood-sucking insects and infecting them with pathogens that cause human diseases. According to the book, there were programs to drop weaponized ticks and other bugs from the air, and that uninfected bugs were released in residential areas in the U.S. to trace how they spread. It suggests that such a scheme could have gone awry and led to the eruption of Lyme disease in the U.S. in the 1960s. Extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. So, just to talk about this a little bit, one commenter in the last few days commented that, the effects of Lyme disease can be extremely debilitating. And it can be, and it's very long lasting, and it over time, it can really, really destroy a person, and destroy their whole physiology. And so they were comparing that to something like Ebola, which is very fast acting and quite lethal. But Lyme disease over a long period of time can really hurt people. This is just another example of the intelligence agencies or the U.S. military doing really insane stuff. And wreaking havoc on our population and other populations. We have, the incident of the Tuskegee experiments. We have napalm and weaponized weather in Vietnam. We have Operation Mockingbird, in which the CIA infiltrated the news agencies, all the major news agencies. And if you don't think they're doing that now, so all of this stuff is stuff that had been, released, years and years ago, 40, 50 years ago. Right now, the documents are becoming uncovered. We know that the Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag. We know that weapons of mass destruction was a false flag. So this just goes to show you that, there's more afoot. There are stranger things afoot than you might think. And just negating the idea that, the government or the powers that be are doing crazy stuff to you just because it's a conspiracy theory. It's just, I don't want to be insulting, but it's just not very, it just kind of flies in the face of the evidence, right? We have evidence that, we've done all kinds of crazy things, exploded nuclear weapons in space and, in the upper stratosphere and the upper atmosphere just to see what would happen. We've exploded nuclear weapons, at ground level just to see what would happen. We've done all kinds of insane things. And I just find it, I'm going to link this below. You can read the story, but I just find it just incredibly frustrating and infuriating that people are like, oh my God, we have all the evidence that we just do insane stuff all the time. But if you bring up something like, they could already be geoengineering. Oh my God, how dare you say that? Like, how dare you think that? How dare you just blindly, accept that, in the case of Operation Mockingbird, right, which was exposed in the early 70s, right, you had basically CIA officials admitting to the fact that they are running stories, and are running stories through the mainstream media, basically propagandizing people, thought shaping, as it were, right? And they're still doing that. But we have a huge alternative news apparatus now. We have something called the internet, and we have people being able right now, so far, able to expose stuff that's going on, and people are becoming much more aware of what, of the propaganda that is happening through the mainstream media. It's happening all the time. How long that can last, who knows, right? Because YouTube is starting to, they're changing their algorithms. People are saying, how long is it before they just shut down alternative media altogether? Oh, only state-sponsored, only, approved media outlets can, only approved news, only official news is allowed, right? So just, if you're one of those people who are like, oh, just so ridiculous because officially they told us that conspiracy theories are bad and people that think that are crazy. So how dare you? Again, if you think that abrupt climate change is a real thing and that the government, the first demand of Extinction Rebellion is to tell the truth. The governments tell the truth, right? So the assumption in that demand is that they're not telling the truth, that they're lying to you. It's a huge, that's broadly stated in the first, anyways. So, what your mindset should be is anything you hear about, them doing stuff should be investigated with full force, with all of your, with an open mind and with everything in your body. Go ahead and investigate it, as weird as it might be. And you might go and investigate it, and you might go, okay, there's not a lot of evidence there, and I don't see anything there for that. But it's totally, it's totally incumbent on you as a free-thinking individual to go ahead and go look at that. I've talked far too long on this subject. I'm going to link all this below. Again, you have the military-industrial complex just doing all kinds of stuff. And there are theories about Ebola. Did you know that the Zika virus was discovered and is controlled by the Rockefeller? Just Google that. I mean, it'll come right up if you just do Zika and Rockefeller. Just Google those words, and it comes up. Oh, the Rockefeller Foundation. They they found this virus. Oh, and then you have Zika, somehow a few years ago, Zika was like all over. Oh my, here comes Zika. And where is it gone? You don't really hear anything about Zika anymore. Why? Because a lot of people were talking about, oh, this Zika is bullshit. Zika is bullshit. Or they're using Zika as a cover for the effects of glyphosate, encephalitis, small, where people are born deformed, and that's actually been linked to glyphosate. And they were trying to blame that on Zika. So again, nice little propaganda work, but it didn't really actually go very far, because alternative news people were discussing this and saying, no, that's not what it is. And then all of a sudden you don't hear about Zika anymore. Why? Because basically alternative media helped to shut that down. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you'd like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.